world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren, and I'm back with Stephanie. And we were having a very spirited conversation about leadership that we wanted to bring forth to our listeners and really get your thoughts and opinions on it. So recently, one of the things I talked about on a recent podcast was the fact that I closed my business and I still have an ongoing lease. And today I met with another business owner who is thinking about closing her business and has a lease. And she was very angry at not even at her landlord, at landlords in general. And she told me a story about a friend of hers who, did all the right things and is being held, the landlord is keeping the security deposits, and that's just the way landlords are, and they're greedy, and they're all these stories about landlords. And so she and I got to talk about how I went from being angry and bitter and poor me. I'm in this situation because of the pandemic. I had to close my business, and now I'm stuck with this lease and all the drama, to really feeling free. I feel completely free.
So what did you do? I'm so curious. You're completely free. Because there's a lot that you just shared there, Maren, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hear the all or none thinking, all or nothing, like when we say, well, that's just the way it is, or all fill in the blank, all men, all landlords, all women, all whatever are this way. It's like an all or nothing thinking. It becomes very concrete. And when I hear the all or nothing thinking and I think of concrete, it's going to take a lot of force, a lot of life force, a lot of energy to break that concrete block up. And that's where most of us, including myself, we can be there. And it's like the only way that's going to break it up is going to be drama and trauma. And I just heard you say that too. It's like it catches all your energy, and all of that energy becomes like focused into breaking up the concreteness.
Right.
And you just said you got free.
Yes.
So how did you get out of jail? What did you do?
So I had to make a choice. And I'm glad you brought that up about being concrete. I had to make a choice of really my thoughts don't impact my landlord at all. Like, even if
the landlord really probably doesn't even really know your thoughts.
No. So even if I wrote hateful letters and I sued my landlord and, my landlord, I'm a small fish, and, it's not going to impact my landlord. I'm the only person. That's not true. My thoughts impact me, and they impact my family and my team and the people around me. Mm-hmm. So my anger and my bitterness and my thinking, oh, poor me, this is, this is happening to me. And the impact is on me, on my body. And that's where I feel it.
And so let's just unpack the thoughts, because you just said all my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so we've said in earlier podcasts too, it's like, I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions. I have a past, but I'm not my past. Well, then who the heck are we? And I heard this really great conversation with Byron Katie, actually, who says, who does the work, which I love it. Is this true? And there's something that she says, if you're having a thought and you hear that thought, or you feel that thought, or you notice that thought, then who's noticing? Who's feeling it? Who is that? Then really you aren't the thought. So then who are you? And that just blows me away. You're right. Like if I hear a thought that my landlord is this or all landlords are that, that's a thought that's going to create an emotion in me. But if I slow down enough and go, wait a minute, who just heard that thought? Who just believed that thought? Because believing, if we believe it, then we will be living it, which means we're going to make different choices, different actions, different behaviors are going to all come from that very thought if we believe it is me.
It will also attract different people, different opportunities, different, all the things that come into my life will also be different.
Yeah.
And that's the choice. So I did. That's where I was able to separate myself from that thought.
Okay, so slow down there. So you separated yourself from that thought. So
right.
Just tell me a little bit about what does that mean to separate yourself from that thought? Like what did you do or how did you create a space to actually do that?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that it's been years of practice, and not to make it so that it's like it doesn't have to be years of practice for our listeners. It's the awareness of the fact that that's even a possibility. Like first you have to realize that it's a possibility, and then you need to stop every once in a while. And this is a practice that I do in my day all day long. And I've chosen to do it where I stop and I just observe for a moment. And I say, I'm not my thoughts. What are the thoughts that are going? And I observe the thoughts and I go, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Fascinating
and some
creation,
of them,
right?
Fascinating creation.
Listen to that thought go. Wow, look at. Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say, just to kind of look at it, is like the practice of presencing, like the practice of being able to be very present to what just happened.
Right.
Like, so a thought comes in and we go, oh, wait a minute. And so instead of quickly grabbing onto that, oh yeah, that thought is me, to slow down enough to just evaluate it and go, wait a minute, does this thought bring me joy and meaning and purpose and give me energy? Or does it actually create an unwanted emotion or like a disharmonic emotion that is going to get me into reactivity? Which one is it going to do?
So I'm actually a slower learner than that.
Good. So let's take it down even slower. I love it.
Exactly. So what I had to do when I'm actually triggered, I wasn't able to stop. Like I'm on a runaway train in my triggered thought. There is
full load, right. No brakes.
No brakes, just full on going. So the practice for me actually started with intentionally, like, all right, full disclosure, setting an alarm on my phone to go off every hour. So once an hour during my waking hours, outside of meeting times, et cetera, my alarm would go off and I would literally stop and look at what thoughts were running through my head.
So you take time to stop and listen.
Right. So I started training myself to observe my thoughts in non-triggered places when I wasn't in it, when I wasn't in the emotion of it.
When so you were already just kind of hanging out, having a good time. I was just
hanging out going, oh, look, there's a thought. Oh, no, that's not who I am. If I followed that thought, where would it lead? Oh, it would lead to that emotion. What would a different thought be that I could have? Where would that lead? So I started being the observer of my thoughts when I knew I could do it, because my little alarm on my phone told me now's the time.
Even though it's not random, it kind of is random because you weren't really present to that alarm happening.
Correct.
It went off, it triggered oh, this is my time to pay attention to what I'm thinking.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And so I started to train that muscle, and it literally is just a muscle. And I started training that way of thinking. And then I started to be able to apply that in some minor situations that would show up and again, full disclosure, I wasn't able to do it in the moment. I would recognize that, at least at this point, I was able to recognize, oh, that freight train has left the station and it is full on going, no brakes. And I recognize it's not me, but I don't know how to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So my
So
husband
you can actually slow down the train.
I could step away from the train. I wasn't able to slow it down in that moment. And here's where, my poor husband, he's had this go on, where I was able to say to him, I am a little out of control right now. I need to go away, and I will come back when I can talk to you without this runaway train. Right.
So this is really key, so that you could actually give yourself some space.
Yep.
And it wasn't about giving yourself space to just distract you from the uncomfortability of what you were feeling. You actually invested your time to be able to say, okay, now I'm going to really look within and listen to that thought, or see where that thought would take me, or feel what's really going on. Like, you actually presenced. I think that's really key, especially as leaders. And like I said, leader of yourself, leader of others. It's like we tend to go into that automatic response of time. And I work with people who will say, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack. And I'll say, well, what are you thinking? And they're like, I have no idea. It just happens. And Joe Dispenza has some great research on that. He's a wonderful researcher, a chiropractor, and has studied so much about the neuroplasticity in the brain. And there's a great example. I say, we did this before about crossing our arms. Like, we tend to cross our arms the same way, and then to go and actually reverse it feels so uncomfortable that
Right.
in training, we'll say, no, I just want to go back to the old way because it's so much more comfortable. Well, this is true with an anxiety attack, is that because we haven't taken a practice to notice what we're thinking, even when we're in a good place, then we constantly just keep defaulting back to what is habitual. Not
Right.
always what's helpful, but what's habitual. And this is real key, what you're saying. So, I think of all the times of to break the habit. I mean, this is Joe Dispenza's line, to break the habit of being yourself, because we talk about persona. And so I know you and I talked about that a little bit earlier, about personas, that there's all kinds of personalities that we could embody. And we tend to default on the same one. And there's the concrete thinking, well, that's just who I am. That's my personality. And we tend to think that we cannot change that. And that's simply not true. And we say,
Right.
is that true? We have to ask ourselves, is that true? Or is it that I've just habitually practiced being this way? And I haven't created space for me to reflect on whether or not this is moving me towards an ideal of where I want to be in my life? Or is it just really I say, what's the difference between a rut and a grave? Is 6 feet, right? But if you keep going in the same old rut, eventually you're going to dig yourself a grave.
Yeah. I've also heard it described as like a groove in a record, for those of us that are old enough to have had records, right? Like where it just keeps playing the same thing and same thing. And it does take intention and attention to move ourselves out of that. And for me, like I said, I'm a fairly slow learner. So I had to do it in a non-habitual situation where I haven't just immediately responded, because that's what would happen is I would react, respond in an instant without stopping to breathe or think, and then I got to the point where I could stop, but I realized that I couldn't yet stop the runaway train. So I would extract myself from the situation, whether it was at work or at home or even by myself. And then I started to write out, go ahead and let the runaway train go, and I would do it in a written form. So I would write all the journaling,
yeah.
Right? All the poor me stuff, all the I'm so angry at, and like all of the reasons I was justified for feeling how I was feeling. And I would write it all out. And then here's a great exercise for anyone who's in this position, is write alternative stories. Like, what's another story that I could tell? And it took me a little bit to understand what that meant. So in regards to the studio, I'll give you my example. I actually did this with the studio is I I wrote a letter to my landlords of all the reasons why, the studio failed, and I had to close it, and that they weren't being fair to me, and that they weren't impacted by the pandemic, so they could at least, like blah blah blah, all the stuff that was coming up in me.
A victim
And
story.
my victim story.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
And
then
then wanting to make them into a violator. Like
Well,
they violate. Yeah.
exactly.
And please rescue me.
And please rescue me.
That's the three triad, right? Like
Right.
you're going to go around the block: victim, violator, rescuer.
Right. And then I did it. There were aspects where I wrote a violating email to them. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to do that to you, et cetera, et cetera. And then I decided, like, okay, what's another story that I could tell? And one of the things that is true about creativity is that it needs space to flourish. So if I am going to try to be creative about other stories that I could tell, and I'm in this rut of telling myself a prior story, I won't ever be able to see that there's another option. There's no creativity there. There's no way for me to. So I dumped all of my other stories out, and then I started to get creative. Like, what is another story I could tell? And I was like, well, what if my landlord is strapped and they don't have an option for helping me because they're in a really bad situation and the pandemic really impacted them, and they would love to help me, but they can't. Well, that's a story. Okay. What if, and I just started to go through what ifs. What if this? What if that? What if the other thing?
And I think this is great because it's opening and it's creating a restoration, a restoring of something that isn't a victim, a rescuer story, or a violator story. And I always say, I've said this in previous podcasts, what would love do? And I had an incident today of working with a client myself, and I was saying, what would be the greatest story? They were experiencing a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress in their life, and it's like they're caught in it. And like I was saying before, if we haven't practiced to slow down the train with a full load, without brakes, we're automatically having an anxiety attack without even thinking. So how do we break the cycle? And I said, what if you imagined in your future the highest possibility that this, whatever this is, not being able to get out of a lease, or breaking up with a relationship that broke your heart, or having a fear of the unknown of what's going to happen after retirement, or all these different things. What if, just what if, that was the best thing that ever happened to you? And this, whatever the issue is, had to happen so it would make space for the most beautiful, extraordinary, surprising, delighting, light and delight, magical, mystical, wonderful life that you are going to lead. Right from that place. And it's not about anybody else in the outer world that you can't, it's not about trying to control all the other things. You're just writing the story with you as the first person. So, what would that be? And I did this myself. I said, I had this experience of going into this meditation, and I was on Oprah or Ellen, and I remember they were saying, "Oh, poor sad tomato story." Oh, Stephanie, you're a poor sad tomato. And I'm like, no, it's the best thing that ever happened. And oh my gosh, it became a pot of gold, and this happened, and then that happened, and extraordinary. And I made it up. Like I was making it up, but I made it up in a way that absolutely made me laugh my head off. I'm like, which laughter is a way it breaks the whole synapse in the brain. And it completely changed my state of being. It broke a pattern. It broke that rut that was going to become a death sentence. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say too, is like find a new restorative story and write as many as you possibly can until you get one that absolutely excites and delights you.
Yeah. I'm going to grab onto that, what you were talking about, because right now it seems like the only impact is on me, which is huge, right? So the impact on me is that once I let go of the poor sad tomato story and the I need to do something and make them pay and whatever all the other stories were.
It's exhausting.
Once I let go of that, I literally felt like I could breathe more easily, that my shoulders were freer, like all of the stuff inside of me, which then, yes, I'm not as angry and tense around my team or around my husband. I'm not as triggered by things. It's like, so you're starting to see the ripple effect in my immediate world. The larger impact that has is I get to choose who I am in the world, which means that if I choose to be someone who needs to extract from other people and make them pay and feel like justified and this and that, the other thing, that's what I'm going to attract to me, is situations that I always need to be doing that in.
Well, we get addicted to that. We talked about that in the inner pharmacy, podcast. It's like we get addicted because it's what's familiar. We know what's going, it's predictable. Oh, hell no, we don't enjoy it. But some part of us actually does enjoy it, and we get addicted to it.
Right.
And we can't get off that wheel of suffering again,
Yeah. So we need to keep creating situations like that. Because we also did a podcast around like where we talked about how you do one thing is how you do everything. Because I was able to shift that one place in my life and say, you know what, I'm going to choose to love me more than I choose to not like you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I chose that, I sent a message to every cell in my body, every cell in the universe, every living being. She values herself more than she doesn't like other people.
I was just going to have you say that again, because that's a real key thing. It's like we try to make it about everybody else and we want to change everybody else. But if we really turn it inward towards ourselves and not from a self-punishment place, because that's just now we're just being our own inner violator again and making ourselves a victim again. But if we literally choose to go, wait a minute, I'm choosing to love myself more than I am disliking that or hating this or not wanting to come close to that person. And this is a key. When we ask for help, it's not from a place of being a victim. It's from a place of being a lover, because you are so divinely connected to so many wonderful, beautiful souls that taking care of ourselves and our cells, cells as well, literally uplifts not only ourselves but each other. And so asking for help is actually an act of love, and being willing to look within, it takes an act of courage, which is also love. So there's nothing to fix. You're not broken. It's that you're being called to a higher state of love and a higher state of restoration. And that's the restoring of one's heart, body, and soul, and leadership. I read earlier today, it's like, the world needs more role models, and that we cannot heal on our own. We're not supposed to heal on our own. We get so much from someone who has gone through something without ever them having to say a word to us, just by literally presencing or witnessing what we're going through. And that is the holding space and the modeling of what is possible. And so as leaders, if we start to journal or we start to look within and start to question our thoughts, like if I am having this thought, well, then that thought, that's a thought. That's not me. Who's having that thought? Oh, right. If I heard it, there must be some presence that's hearing it or seeing it.
And right now, that thought is controlling and running your life.
Exactly. So who's in leadership control here? So do I want to be a leader? I need to role model that leadership within myself, which then models it to my team, to my loved ones. It just radiates out.
And this is what brings me full circle to what we said at the very beginning of it may not have seemed like a leadership conversation, and yet that's all it was. It's about every choice that we make, we have an opportunity of, am I going to be in charge, or am I going to let my runaway thoughts be in charge?
That's right.
Who is going to be the leader here? And every time I stop and I question those thoughts, I empower myself again and again, which means now I empower the people around me again and again. And now I'm stepping into the soulful leader that we talk about.
So this brings up another little piece that I have been hearing a lot too. It's like how we do one thing is how we do everything, of course. But there are certain areas in our life that we have greater skill development in. And that has a certain persona to it. And I was having this conversation with a client earlier today, and they are really quite they love snowboarding, absolutely love snowboarding. And they're not at all, not at all afraid or resistant about growing and learning and getting help and getting a coach and getting guidance and, going to another level. And yet, if you take that, that's a brilliant thing. And I said, so where are you feeling like you would like more help? And she was kind of expressing where she wanted more help. And I said, well, who are you on the hill? Like there's a different person who shows up. Can you bring that person, that persona, because they think differently. They're enjoying their day on the hill. And it doesn't matter if it's snowing or if it's sunny. There's something going on inside of them. There's a leadership role going on inside of them that allows them to grow their skill and development in a way that builds mastery on the ski hill. Can you bring that into the other area that you're struggling with right now? And I say that to all of us. And it's like, it's translatable, but we think they're separate, and they're not. Because how you do one thing is how you can do everything. Right. So where do you find that you have great leadership role or great skill that things, you don't mind being in the unknown. You don't mind stepping out of the comfort zone. You love to grow. Who are you there that you can translate over into another area that you're having challenges with?
And just to be clear, when you say translate, one of the practices that I have is literally just, I go inside and I ask that Maren that is so good at dancing, or that is, whatever she is masterful at. I'm like, hey, could you come over here and help me out?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have to figure out what translating that into this looks like. I can literally, like you just said, it's like asking for help.
Well, it reminds me of one of our teachers that we have, Jean Houston, who has written, I don't even know, umpteen many books. And she'll tell you she does not like to write. And yet she has published, I don't know how many bestsellers. And so her secret is she loves to cook. And so she has her inner chef cook up a book. And that's what we're talking about. We have to use our imagination and our creativity. And that is a muscle that needs to be practiced. And so to really listen inwardly, like notice what you notice when you're in different areas of your life, when you feel most empowered and inspired. And yes, we would love to just stay in that role all the time, and that can be possible, but life is meant to help us evolve. And so when you're outside of that comfort zone, because we're going to want to put our arms back to the way they always go, can you allow yourself to be uncomfortable and invite that other part of you that has mastery in another area over into the part that feels uncertain, that feels a little unsure of their confidence, or, geez, I don't know what to do. And can you invite that part in? And the other part I always say is like, there is no Olympian that makes it to the Olympics without a coach and without a team. This is so key as leaders and as lovers, frankly. It's like what does it take? It takes a community to raise a child, right? why do we think that there's something wrong with us when we ask for help, when we ask for coaching, or we ask for a group of people to be around us to support us? We need each other. We role model and support each other, and we help remind ourselves of our greatness and our beauty. And a team also helps to cover your blind spots. This is the whole movement. Instead of being in the victim, violator, rescuer, always whining of like, why isn't the system rescuing me? Why aren't I'm feeling violated by that, or I'm such a victim. Or screw you, no one's gonna make me a victim. I'm just gonna push my way through and at all costs. I mean, that's the violator. Or as I've said earlier in one of our podcasts, Maren, that I'm done with being a professional rescuer. I realized that I was getting my needs met from rescuing instead of looking at totally letting go and going, okay, what wants to happen? And who's my team? And, what does Spirit want for Stephanie? And what does Spirit want from Stephanie? It's both ways questions, right? Like, what does Spirit want for me? Which is going to be way bigger than what Stephanie wants for Stephanie. And so allow it to be beautiful, allow it to unfold. It's real key.
And that is one of I think, the biggest things for me of why I want to choose to not be attached to whatever the landlord's decision is and let that be theirs, is because the possibility and the potential that opens up when I stop holding that so tightly. Like, we had done something, so if you guys, if you're listening, just put your palms out, it's like, put your hands out, palms up, right? And that is where we give and receive. And then if I start to close my hands, that's when we grasp onto something. And what you'll notice is you just created fists. Exactly. And Stephanie is punching me through the screen.
Yeah. And that's when you're going to fight against
fists,
something.
Right. That's when we start fighting against something. And how do you hold on? Like, that limits what I can give and what I can receive, because I've just made a much smaller space in my palm.
And yet to open up can feel so vulnerable and so scary.
It can. And that's the whole process that we talked about today. And it's not an instant fix. It is a process. It does take being aware of the thoughts that close me down and the choices that I'm making and who I want to be. I want to be the person who has infinite possibilities. And that's why I chose to uncurl my fist and let go of my anger, my whatever, all of my judgments, because I don't honestly know what's going on with my landlord. And it doesn't matter. All I know is I signed a contract and I can approach them from my point of view and be in a discussion with them, and whatever their response is, then I can respond from there. As long as I keep my hands open, there will be an option that shows up.
I look forward to the unfolding of this. I am so curious to hear the next chapter, part 2.
I know.
What happened next?
You all are on this journey with me, so I'm excited to share it as it unfolds. I will share it. So, well, thank you all for listening today. Please do give your feedback and your input on our Facebook page or our LinkedIn page. You can find us at the Soulful Leaders. And if you would like to watch Stephanie punching me through the screen, you can visit us with her closed fists, right? You can watch us on our new YouTube channel, also the Soulful Leaders. So thanks again for joining us. We'll see you all next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.